Okay, this is taking a lot more time than I thought it would, so I'm already on the third video. Next, I'm going to talk about races and classes. So, in RPGs, in order to establish a unique identity and also to guide your own play style when you're role playing, because obviously it'll be no fun if you're just role playing as a character very similar to yourself. Um, in the table of contents for most of these rule books, we can see that next they're going to move on to, if it is a fantasy or sci-fi world, the different races you can play. So as you can see with Starfinder, they have androids, humans, so you can play as a human, and then some other um, species that you can play as, and then also classes. And this is what guides your play style and how you can offer something to the whole of the group. So your specialties. We have mechanics, soldiers, operatives. So we would definitely have to go into more detail to figure out exactly what these classes do. But it's not the same for every game. So um, in King Arthur Pendragon, you're only playing as a knight. So what becomes more important instead of races and classes is what they have here: family and fatherland. So what's more important is your lineage and your background and where you come from, and that's what sets you apart from the other knights. What I love about Call of Cthulhu is everyone is playing some kind of investigator, and you don't always start out as an investigator. Um, so, what's important is kind of, like King Arthur, where you're coming from before you get pulled into some kind of mystery where you begin investigating. So I'm trying to get down to the character creation here, where they have a list of the recommended backgrounds. Here we go. So these are some sample occupations that people start out as. And this is from the 1920s. I forgot to make that clear. So maybe you started as a drifter or a doctor, or you were a farmer, or a military officer. A very popular one that appears in Lovecraft's tales are professors of some kind. So that way, everyone ends up as an investigator, but they're all bringing their own specialties from their backgrounds in life before they were pulled into this mystery. So next, in many of these rule books, we find a section on skills. And so these are the things that you can do in the game to solve problems faced by your character. And oftentimes, these will cover what happens when you fail, because obviously you're not going to succeed at everything, otherwise, it wouldn't be fun. And then beyond that, for skills, there's going to be information as to how you get better at these skills, because obviously there has to be a way to level up and improve so that you have a higher chance of success. Otherwise, it wouldn't be any fun. So, excuse my coughing. Next is going to be a section on the game system itself, and the keyword here is dice. For all RPGs, I would say 99% of RPGs use dice, and that's because dice offers an element of randomness, because if you always know what's going to happen next in the game, it's no fun. So there needs to be a little bit of randomness. So I find this annoying, but some games, like Edge of the Empire, use proprietary dice. And so you can just go to a game store and pick up some RPG dice. You need to buy their dice. Now, obviously, you can see the shapes here. you can use regular dice and try to figure out what number represents what result. But more often than not, you're going to have to buy their set of dice. Now, what I like about Call of Cthulhu is it uses a D100 system, and that means percentile dice. So what happens is you roll these two dice. You can see this one landed on 70, this one landed on 7, so you rolled a 77%. So if your character is 77% proficient at a skill, like firing a weapon, then you succeeded if you roll that number or lower. But as soon as you roll 78 or higher, then the character has failed. And I really like that system. Also, when reading through the mechanic sections, that's where you really find what is unique to how this game works. What I really like about Call of Cthulhu is this mechanic called pushing the roll. And I think there is a specific section on pushing the roll. I didn't write down the page number. Oh, I did. So it's on page 84. Here we go. Still figuring out how to work a Mac. Okay. Here it is, pushing the roll. So what can be really frustrating in a RPG game is you roll the dice and you fail. And that's it. You failed. There's nothing you can do. But Call of Cthulhu has this mechanic where you can retry the roll, but you have to explain something that you do as kind of, I suppose, like when you're in a situation where you have a split second left to try something, as a desperate measure, and so you can roll again, and if you succeed, you're fine. But if you fail, something drastic happens, and that makes the story a lot more fun. Okay, so after mechanics, there's definitely going to be a section on combat, because for all the RPGs, because most of them are all coming from Dungeons and Dragons, there's people who would argue that all tabletop RPGs are a form of Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, there's going to be combat, and here they have tactical rules. So you need to know how you can inflict damage on opponents or defend against them trying to damage you. And then you also need to know what happens when you get injured. So are you still able to keep fighting? Do you need to be healed? And then how do you die? What needs to happen for your character to be dead? So in Call of Cthulhu, this is half the fun. And so you're actually expected to die. So their description on what happens when you die is going to be a little bit different than in other adventures. I think in games like Starfinder, characters tend to be more powerful than your everyday average human. Because when your character dies, it's not a good time like it is in Call of Cthulhu, and you're going to be frustrated and upset that you have to start from scratch again. I think from here I'm going to stop the video, and then I'm going to move lastly to scenarios.